News just coming in, 5 Indian fishermen facing the death sentence in Sri Lanka have been released. India had filed an appeal in the Supreme Court of Sri Lanka, if you remember, against a verdict of its High Court awarding the death sentence to these 5 Indian fishermen in the island nation for alleged drug smuggling. All fishermen hailing from Tamil Nadu were apprehended in the year 2011 and were sentenced to death by the Colombo High Court on the 30th of October for alleged drug trafficking. Editor Strategic Affairs Gaurav Sawant now joins me live from the newsroom. Gaurav, diplomatic negotiations finally bearing fruit. This is a huge relief for the fishermen and their families.
This indeed is, and this is quite diplomacy that was at work and for quite some time. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi had spoken to the Sri Lankan President Mahinda Rajapakse. After the two spoke, there were also emissaries between India and Sri Lanka who were constantly in touch, and this happened behind the scenes in a step-by-step manner. The first step was to commute the death sentence to a life in prison. That's the only way prisoners then could be sent to India. The inmates could be sent to India. That was step one. And step two is President Mahinda Rajapakse respecting India's views, and this is victory for Indian diplomacy and Sri Lanka honoring India's word. Now the 5 fishermen are at the Indian mission and soon would be repatriated to India.
So what does this mean for the fishermen now? They will be in an Indian jail henceforth?
A little clarity is required on that because this information is also coming to us through sources. The fishermen have been released.
Gaurav, I will have to interrupt. I believe Mr. Subramanian Swamy is on the phone line with us. Mr. Swamy, you were the first to tell us that the fishermen will be coming home, and in fact that process is now underway.
Yes, it's the basic thing of pardoning is over, and now they will be transferred to Indian authorities. And here we will. They will have to serve a sentence because all that has happened is the capital punishment is gone.
Yes.
And they can appeal and perhaps be released as a consequence.
So what does this mean for the fishermen, sir? They will be in an Indian jail henceforth?
Well, not henceforth. I mean, they have a right to appeal. And in the process, we find we are also discussing with the Sri Lankan government to actually. It's very difficult. It's a court which has decided that they are guilty, and the presidential powers is not to set aside the sentence. What he can do is he can give a waiver on the punishment, and so he has waived the hanging. So what is left is the conviction that has to be only set aside by another court. And so under the treaty which they are being transferred, they will have to face a trial in India.
Also, Mr. Swamy, would you term this as a big diplomatic win?
It is a great victory for Narendra Modi himself. I have been of the view from day one that you have to talk to Sri Lanka. It's a sovereign nation. All this dadagiri that these so-called extremist fringe parties, whom you call as Tamil parties in Tamil Nadu, they have just created the pitch because they have a vested interest in keeping this problem alive. They don't want Tamils and Sinhalese to live in peace. So we have fallen victim to that, and I think now we must realize that Sri Lanka can be persuaded by discussion. They have faith in us because I personally, because I have been opposing the LTT, which is something which is a cause dear to them. They have so many of their top leaders have been killed by the LTT. So today we have the ridiculous example of ICO announcing that he's going to celebrate the birthday of Prabhakaran, the man who killed Rajiv Gandhi.
Yes.
I mean, nothing could be more outrageous. The man should be...
Mr. Swamy, I believe Gaurav also has a question for you, but before that, I just want to ask you one last question, which is what does this mean for the other Indian fishermen who are languishing in the jails of Lanka?
No, there are hardly any other fishermen. They have been, the process of releasing them after they take bail is going on. Their problem is their fishing boats have to be now released, and for that I'm going to Sri Lanka on the 24th, and I will ensure that poor fishermen's boats are released, or the rich businessmen who are who employ fishermen, their boats, they will have to employ some lawyer and get it. But as far as I'm concerned, these poor fishermen whose sole surviving economic weapon is their fishing boat, those boats I'm going to try and release in this visit.
Dr. Swami, if you can hear me, Gaurav Sawant here, sir. Dr.
Yes.
Swami, while Prime Minister Modi spoke to President Mahinda Rajapaksa, you were also, sources tell us, working behind the scenes. Can you tell us what were you, who were you speaking to, and is there a quid pro quo here, sir?
There's no quid pro quo. We are friends of Sri Lanka, and the Rajapaksa knows that. The whole of Sri Lanka knows it. We are both Modi and myself are very well received there, and therefore there's no quid pro quo at all. There was a treaty signed in 2010, and that treaty is what we invoked, and it's a reciprocity treaty with a reciprocity, because we have transferred some Sri Lankans who are convicted on Indian in Indian courts. So I think this is an indicator of how to do business with Sri Lanka. You see, you can't threaten them, and therefore the only way to get work done is to talk to them as a fellow democratic country, a SAARC country, and I think they have become very, they have delivered on that. They have responded to our overtures.
All right, Mr. Swami, thank you so much for joining us. Well, that is a huge relief for the fishermen as well as their families. They are on their way back to India, is what we're being told. Editor South T.S. Sudhir also joining me on the phone line. T.S., what details do you have now? How long will it take for these fishermen to get back to India?
Well, sources from the Sri Lankan government have said that they have been released. They have been handed over to the Indian officials. The Indian High Commission will be preparing a statement and will probably release it in about an hour from there. And it's quite likely that now that they have been freed from prison, they could be coming to Tamil Nadu within the next 24 hours or so. A huge diplomatic victory as far as India is concerned. They have been able to manage back behind the scenes diplomacy with the Sri Lankan government and managing to convince the Sri Lankan president that he could actually commute the sentence, since pardon is something which would have been very difficult in a case involving smuggling of narcotics. In this case, what the Sri Lankan president has done is to commute the sentence to 3 years, a sentence which they have already served in prison since 2011 when they were arrested. So it's quite likely that within the next 24 to 48 hours, they could actually come back home.
Also, T.S., the issue of fishermen is a very emotive matter for both Sri Lanka and India, especially with the Tamil Nadu-based parties. This is a diplomatic win for the Modi government, and this is something that the Tamil parties will just have to agree with.
Absolutely. In fact, ever since this sentence was handed over by the court in Sri Lanka, we have been seeing a lot of protests staged in both Rameshwaram as well as in Chennai by different Tamil groups, obviously upping the ante because they do realize that it's an emotive issue in Tamil Nadu. So obviously many political parties looking to make political capital out of it. But what the NDA government has managed to do is to actually deliver on the promise that they would manage to get the 5 Tamil fishermen back home safely. And that is something that is definitely likely to help the BJP for one politically in Tamil Nadu, but also bolster the image of the Narendra Modi government that they managed to take a non-confrontationist attitude approach vis-a-vis the Rajapaksa government and managed to get the 5 Tamil fishermen back home safely.
All right, so the 5 fishermen, Emerson, Augustus, Wilson, Prasad and Langlet, all hailing from Tamil Nadu, who were apprehended in the year 2011 and were sentenced to death by the Colombo High Court on the 30th of October. Well, they are on their way back to India. T.S. Sudhir and Gaurav Sawant, thank you so much for joining us on that breaking.